Sarah Chen walked through the bright hallways of Harmony's Edge Station. The massive space station floated between three star systems. It was the home of the Galaxy Council. Sarah had been living here for 2 years now. She was only 23 years old, but she was one of Earth's best scientists. The station was huge. It had sections for each of the major species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians lived in the hot, dry areas. They looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. The Vorthak preferred cold spaces filled with crystals. They were made of living crystal themselves. The Nebulans lived in special gas chambers. They had no solid bodies at all. Sarah worked in the research section. Her job was to study how different species could help each other with medicine. She had made some amazing discoveries. She found ways to help Zephyrian children who were born sick. She learned how to use Vorthak crystals to heal broken bones. The other species were starting to respect her work, but Sarah knew something that most people didn't know. Earth was not as weak as everyone thought. The Galaxy Council believed humans were a small, peaceful species. They thought Earth had simple technology and few weapons. The Council gave humans very little power. Earth could only send 5 people to represent all humans in the galaxy. The truth was very different. For 50 years, Earth had been building in secret. They built weapons and ships that no one else knew about. They hid these things in empty space far from the trade routes. The Council thought these were just mining stations or research labs. Sarah's father had told her about this before she left Earth. He was Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Most people thought he ran a small patrol fleet. They were wrong. Admiral Chen commanded hundreds of warships hidden throughout human space. Why do we hide our real strength? Sarah had asked him. Because the galaxy is not ready for the truth, he had said. The big species like things the way they are. They make the rules. They decide who lives and who dies. If they knew how strong we really are, they would try to destroy us before we could defend ourselves. Sarah understood, but she didn't like it. She believed that all species could work together if they were honest with each other. She spent her days on the station trying to build real friendships. She ate meals with Zephyrian soldiers. She played crystal music with young Vorthak artists. She even learned to communicate with the Nebulans using special light patterns. The Galaxy Council met every day in the Great Chamber. It was a huge room with seats for representatives from hundreds of species. But only the big 3 species really mattered. The Zephyrian Empire controlled most of the galaxy's military. The Vorthak Collective managed trade and money. The Nebulan consciousness handled information and communication. All the smaller species had to follow their rules. These rules were called the Stability Doctrine. The idea was simple. Never change anything that might cause war. Keep the big species happy. Let them stay in control. This would keep peace in the galaxy. Sarah hated the Stability Doctrine. She saw how it hurt smaller species every day. The Korath people needed medicine, but the Zephyrians wouldn't trade with them. The silicon-based Greel were dying from a disease, but the Vorthak said treating them wasn't profitable. The gaseous wisp were losing their homeworld to pollution, but the Nebulans called fixing it too complicated. Every time Sarah tried to help these species, she was told the same thing. This might upset the balance. We cannot risk it. Ambassador Williams was the head of Earth's delegation. He was a tired old man who had given up fighting the system. He spent most of his time trying to make sure the big species didn't notice Earth too much. Keep your head down, Sarah, he always told her. Do your research, but don't make waves. We're safe as long as they think we're harmless. Sarah tried to follow his advice, but it was getting harder. She was a scientist. Her job was to find the truth and share it. But the truth was dangerous on Harmony's Edge Station. One day, Sarah was working in her lab when Dr. Vextar came to visit. He was a Zephyrian scientist who had become her friend. His scales were bright green, which meant he was still young for his species. Sarah, I need your help, he said in his hissing voice. My government is doing something wrong. I found documents, but I don't understand what they mean. Sarah looked at the data files Vextar had brought. Her blood went cold as she read them. The files showed that the Zephyrian Empire was mining in forbidden space. They were taking rare metals from systems that belonged to no one. This violated the Treaty of Empty Worlds. Worse, they were using slave labor from conquered species. The files showed thousands of workers dying in the mines. Men, women, and children from dozens of small worlds were being worked to death to make the Zephyrians richer. This is terrible, Sarah whispered. We have to tell the council. Vextar looked scared. But if I speak against my own government, they will kill me. And my family. Sarah put her hand on his scaly shoulder. Then I'll do it. I'll present this to the council. The truth needs to come out, are you sure? The Zephyrians won't forgive this. And the other big species won't want to upset them. Sarah thought about all the innocent people dying in those mines. She thought about the small species who had no voice in the council. She thought about what her father had taught her about doing what was right even when it was dangerous. I'm sure, she said. Someone has to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. That night, Sarah sent a message to her father on Earth. She couldn't tell him exactly what she had found because all messages were monitored, but she used a code they had agreed on long ago. Dad, I found something important in my research, something that could change how we see our neighbors. I'm going to share it with my colleagues tomorrow. I hope you understand. I love you. On Earth, Admiral Chen read the message and felt his heart sink. He knew what it meant. His daughter was about to do something that would put her in terrible danger. He wanted to order her to come home immediately, but he also knew that Sarah was right. Sometimes the truth was more important than safety. He sent back a simple message. Do what you think is right, little star. We will always be proud of you. Sarah spent that night preparing her presentation. She organized all the evidence. She made sure everything was clear and easy to understand. She knew she would only get one chance to speak. As she worked, she looked out the window of her lab. She could see the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, people were suffering while the galaxy's leaders pretended not to see. Tomorrow, she would make sure they could no longer ignore the truth. Sarah didn't know that her father was already preparing for the worst. Deep in Earth's hidden military bases, orders were being sent out. Ships were being fueled. Weapons were being loaded. If something happened to Sarah, the galaxy would learn that Earth was not as weak as they thought. But Sarah believed in peace. She believed in doing the right thing. She believed that if she just told the truth, the council would have to act. She was young and hopeful and brave. She was also about to discover just how wrong she was about the galaxy she lived in. The next morning, Sarah walked into the great chamber of the Galaxy Council. Her hands shook slightly as she carried the data pad with all the evidence. The chamber was huge, with seats rising up in circles like an ancient arena. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the seats, but everyone knew only the big three mattered. Ambassador Kexthar of the Zephyrian Empire sat in the center seat. He was old and powerful, with dark red scales that marked him as a high-ranking noble. His yellow eyes never showed mercy. To his right sat the Vorthak representative, a being made of blue crystal that sparkled when it moved. To his left was the Nebulan speaker, a cloud of glowing gas contained in a clear sphere. Sarah had requested to speak during the open session. This was supposed to be time when any species could bring concerns to the council. In practice, most smaller species were too afraid to say anything important. Ambassador Williams tried one last time to stop her. Sarah, please reconsider. This could destroy Earth's relationship with the council. Some things are more important than politics, Sarah replied. She stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. The chamber grew quiet. All eyes turned to the young human woman standing alone in the middle of the vast space. Sarah felt very small, but she thought about the people dying in the secret mines. That gave her strength. Honored representatives, she began, her voice clear and strong. I come before you today with evidence of crimes against the Treaty of Empty Worlds. A murmur ran through the chamber. The Treaty of Empty Worlds was sacred law. It protected neutral space from being claimed by any single species. Sarah activated her datapad. A holographic display appeared above her head, showing the mining operations. These documents prove that the Zephyrian Empire has been illegally mining in neutral space for over 10 years. They have enslaved workers from dozens of smaller species. Thousands have died. The chamber erupted. Representatives from smaller species gasped and whispered. Some looked angry. Others looked afraid. But Sarah noticed that the big three species didn't look surprised at all. Ambassador Kexthar rose slowly from his seat. When he spoke, his voice was cold and dangerous. These accusations are serious, human. Do you have proof that these documents are real? Yes, Sarah said. I can show you the authentication codes. I can prove when and where these files were created. The evidence is overwhelming. Kexthar's yellow eyes narrowed. Or perhaps these files were created by someone who wanted to damage the reputation of the Empire. Perhaps by a species that seeks to upset the stability of our galaxy. Sarah felt her heart sink. She realized what was happening. You're not denying the crimes. You're questioning whether I made up the evidence. That is exactly what I am doing, Kexthar said, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. I accuse this human of espionage. I accuse her of creating false evidence to destabilize the council. I accuse her of being a spy for her government. The Vorthak representative spoke next. Its crystal body chimed like music as it talked. The Empire has always been a reliable partner. We have no reason to doubt their word, but humans are new to galactic politics. They may not understand the damage their accusations can cause. The Nebulan speaker's gas swirled as it communicated through light patterns. A translator turned its words into speech. Stability must be preserved. The humans' actions threaten the peace we have maintained for centuries. Sarah looked around the chamber desperately. But the evidence is right here. You can verify it yourselves. People are dying. Alleged evidence, Kexthar corrected. Created by someone who has been given access to our systems under the pretense of scientific cooperation. Someone who has betrayed our trust. Ambassador Williams stood up. His face was pale. The human delegation had no knowledge of these accusations. Dr. Chen acted alone without authorization from Earth's government. Sarah felt like she had been hit. Her own ambassador was abandoning her to save Earth's relationship with the Council. Nevertheless, Kexthar continued, this represents a serious breach of protocol. The human government sent a spy disguised as a scientist. They sought to gather intelligence and create false accusations against a respected member of the Council. That's not true, Sarah shouted. I'm not a spy. I'm a scientist. All I want is justice for the people being killed in your minds. But her words were lost in the noise of the chamber. The representatives were talking loudly now. Some supported her, mostly from smaller species, but their voices didn't matter. The council president called for order. He was a Zephyrian, of course. This is a serious matter, he announced. The council will now vote on how to respond to this act of espionage. The vote was quick and brutal. The three major species voted to find Sarah guilty of espionage and false accusations. Most of the smaller species were too afraid to oppose them. A few tried to support Sarah, but they were easily outvoted. The president stood up. Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth, you have been found guilty of espionage against a council member. You have been found guilty of creating false evidence to destabilize galactic peace. The penalty for these crimes is death. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Death for trying to save innocent lives? Death, the president confirmed, to serve as an example to any other species that might consider similar actions. Ambassador Williams was on his feet, protesting, but his words meant nothing. The decision had been made. They gave Sarah 1 hour to prepare. She was allowed to send one final message to Earth. She sat in a small cell thinking about what to say. She could have begged her father to save her. She could have asked Earth to negotiate for her life. Instead, she recorded a simple message. Dad, they're going to kill me because I told the truth about innocent people being murdered. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I thought we could be better than this. I thought the galaxy was ready for real justice. Maybe someday it will be. Tell Mom I love her. Tell David to keep studying science and never stop asking questions. And Dad, don't let my death be meaningless. The galaxy needs to change. I love you all. The execution was held in the main plaza of Harmony's Edge Station. It was broadcast live across the galaxy. As all council executions were, the message was clear. This is what happens when you challenge the established order. Sarah was led to a platform in the center of the plaza. Thousands of beings watched from balconies and viewing screens. She saw her friend Vextar in the crowd. He was crying, his scales turning pale with grief. The executioner was a Zephyrian soldier with a plasma rifle. Sarah was forced to kneel. The president read the charges one final time. Any last words? He asked. Sarah looked up at the cameras. She knew her parents were watching. She knew people across the galaxy were watching. I believed we could be better together, she said. I still believe that. Someday we will be. The plasma rifle fired. Sarah Chen died instantly, her body falling to the cold metal of the platform. The president addressed the galaxy. Let this be a lesson to all who would threaten the stability of our civilization. The council will protect the peace no matter the cost. Across the galaxy, the message was received. Most species got the intended meaning. Don't challenge the big three or you will be destroyed. But on Earth, in a hidden command center deep underground, Admiral Chen received a very different message. His daughter was dead, killed for trying to save innocent lives, murdered by a corrupt system that valued power over justice. Admiral Chen stood up slowly. His staff watched him, waiting for orders. Around the world, similar scenes were playing out in hidden bases. The Earth Defense Force was waiting. "Send the signal," Admiral Chen said quietly. "Activate Protocol Midnight Sun." The galaxy had just made its biggest mistake. They thought killing Sarah Chen would make humans afraid. Instead, they had just awakened something that had been sleeping for 50 years. Earth was no longer hiding. Deep in space, around distant stars, massive ships began to power up. Weapons that violated every galactic treaty came online. Soldiers who had trained in secret for decades received their orders. The Galaxy Council had killed an innocent girl to protect their corrupt system. Now they were about to learn what humans did to people who hurt their children. The age of hiding was over. The age of reckoning was about to begin. 3 days after Sarah Chen's execution, Ambassador Williams stood before the Galaxy Council one last time. His face was gray with grief and anger. He had watched a brilliant young woman die for telling the truth. Now he had to deliver Earth's response. "The human delegation formally withdraws from all Council activities," he announced. "All human personnel will leave Council space within 48 hours. All trade agreements are suspended. All diplomatic relations are terminated." The Council chamber was unusually quiet. Ambassador Kexthar looked pleased with himself. "This is regrettable," he said, not sounding regretful at all. "But perhaps it is for the best. Humans have shown they cannot be trusted members of galactic civilization. Your isolation will teach you humility," added the Vorthak representative. "When you are ready to apologize and accept your proper place, the Council may consider readmitting Earth." Ambassador Williams said nothing more. He simply walked out of the chamber, followed by the remaining human staff. Within hours, every human in Council space was heading home to Earth. The major species were satisfied. They had made their point. Any species that challenged their authority would be crushed or driven away. The smaller species watched in fear and took note. None of them wanted to share Sarah Chen's fate, but the Council had no idea what they had just set in motion. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the war room deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The room had been built 50 years ago, when humanity first made contact with alien life. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps and ship positions. Most of those positions had been secret for decades. "Status report," Admiral Chen ordered. General Martinez, head of Earth's hidden fleet, stepped forward. "All Midnight Sun assets are responding. We have 47 battle stations coming online. The fleet is at 90% readiness." Admiral Chen nodded. For 50 years, Earth had been preparing for this moment. Not because they wanted war, but because they understood something the Galaxy Council had forgotten. Peace could only last if good people were strong enough to protect it. The plan had started with Earth's first contact with alien life. A Vorthak trading ship had detected human radio signals and come to investigate. They found a small isolated world with primitive technology. The aliens were friendly enough, but Earth's leaders noticed something troubling. The galaxy was ruled by whoever had the biggest guns. The 3 major species stayed in power by keeping everyone else weak. They shared just enough technology to keep smaller species dependent, but never enough to threaten their control. Earth's government made a decision that day. They would play along with the charade. They would pretend to be weak and harmless, but in secret, they would build the strength to defend themselves and others. The project took decades. Hidden bases were built in asteroid fields throughout human space. Ships were constructed in deep space, far from trade routes where they might be detected. Scientists worked in secret facilities, developing weapons and technology that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. Earth's public face was carefully crafted. They showed the Council small patrol ships and defensive satellites. They shared harmless scientific discoveries. They sent their best diplomats to build relationships and gather information, but they also sent people like Sarah Chen, young, idealistic humans who genuinely believed in peace and cooperation. These people weren't spies in the traditional sense. They were humanity's conscience, sent to learn if the galaxy was ready for real justice. Sarah's death was her answer. The galaxy was not ready. It would have to be forced to change. Admiral Chen activated the main communication system. His voice was transmitted to hidden bases across human space and beyond. "This is Admiral Chen, authorizing Protocol Midnight Sun. The child killers have shown their true nature. It's time to show them ours." The first sign that something had changed came at the Zephyrian border. Captain Gexthor was commanding a patrol ship near the human-controlled systems. His job was to watch for any unusual activity from Earth's direction. Gexthor was relaxed. Humans had always been predictable. Their small ships moved slowly and always announced themselves. They followed every regulation and never caused trouble. That's why he almost didn't believe his sensors when they started screaming warnings. Something massive was approaching from human space. The scanner said it was a ship, but that couldn't be right. The readings suggested something larger than a Zephyrian dreadnought. Humans didn't have ships that big. Then it came into visual range, and Gexthor's blood went cold. The ship was enormous. It was sleek and black, with weapon ports that looked like they could destroy a small moon. Strange energy patterns danced along its hull. The technology was unlike anything in the Zephyrian database. "This is Captain Gexthor of the Empire patrol ship Fang of Victory," he broadcast. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came in perfect Zephyrian, but the accent was unmistakably human. "This is Admiral Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Force ship Retribution. You are ordered to withdraw to the inner systems immediately. This space is now under human control." Gexthor laughed, though it sounded nervous even to him. "You must be confused, human. This is Empire space. You have no authority here." "We have the only authority that matters," Admiral Santos replied. "Superior firepower. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal, or we will consider you a hostile force." Gexthor was about to respond when his tactical officer screamed. The sensor board was lighting up like a festival display. Ships were appearing throughout the system, dozens of them. All massive. All armed with weapons that made Empire dreadnoughts look like toys. They had been there all along, hidden by some kind of stealth technology that made them invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Now they were revealing themselves, and the message was clear. You are surrounded and outgunned. Gexthor's ship was alone, hundreds of light years from the nearest Empire fleet. He had no choice. Fang of Victory withdrawing as requested, he transmitted, his voice shaking. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human ships appeared in systems that the Council had thought were safely beyond Earth's reach. Mining operations were shut down. Trade convoys were turned away. Border stations were surrounded and forced to surrender. But the humans weren't just showing force at the borders. They had been busy in the galaxy's interior as well. On the trade world of Vex Prime, Vorthak merchants woke up to find human cruisers in orbit. The planet's crystal-based defense grid had been shut down without a shot being fired. Somehow the humans had broken through Vorthak's security like it didn't exist. In the Nebulan core worlds, gas mining platforms suddenly went dark. When Nebulan ships arrived to investigate, they found human vessels attached to each platform. The humans had taken control of the galaxy's main communication network without anyone noticing. The most shocking discovery came at Harmony's Edge station itself. The Council's security chief ran a deep scan of the station's systems and made a terrifying discovery. Human code was everywhere. It had been there for years, hidden deep in the station's computers. The humans hadn't just been pretending to be weak. They had been watching and learning and preparing. They knew everything about Council technology, Council military strength, and Council weaknesses. Admiral Chen received reports from across the galaxy. Every major Council facility was either under human control or within range of human weapons. The operation had taken less than 24 hours. Phase 1 complete, General Martinez reported. All strategic targets secured. Council fleets are trapped in their home systems. Communication networks are under our control. Admiral Chen nodded. It was time for Phase 2. He opened a channel to every world in the galaxy. His face appeared on screens from the Council's core worlds to the smallest independent colonies. When he spoke, his voice was calm and cold. People of the galaxy, my name is Admiral Chen of Earth. 3 days ago, you watched my daughter die. She was executed for the crime of telling the truth about innocent people being murdered. He paused, letting that sink in. You were told that this execution would serve as an example. You were right. It did serve as an example. It showed the galaxy what happens when corrupt leaders value their power more than justice. Another pause. For 50 years, Earth has watched the Galaxy Council claim to represent civilization, while allowing the strong to prey on the weak. We stayed quiet because we hoped things would change. We hoped leaders would find wisdom. We hoped the galaxy would choose justice over stability. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. We were wrong. The galaxy's leaders chose murder instead. They killed a young woman whose only crime was caring about innocent lives. So now we will give them what they have chosen. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, people stared at their screens in shock. The weak, harmless humans had just declared war on the most powerful civilizations in known space. And from what they had seen of human technology, the humans might actually win. In the council chamber on Harmony's Edge, Ambassador Kexthar stared at the tactical displays showing human ships throughout the galaxy. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The galaxy was about to change, whether the council wanted it to or not. The war began at dawn on the Zephyrian homeworld of Zephys Prime. Emperor Kelthax was eating his morning meal when the alarm started. He was old and fat and cruel, ruling over billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. He had never worried about being attacked. The Empire's fleet was the strongest in the galaxy. His aide rushed into the royal chamber. "Your Imperial Majesty, we have a problem. Human ships have appeared in orbit." Emperor Kelthax laughed. "Human ships? How many? 5, 10? Send a patrol to chase them away." "No, Your Majesty. Hundreds of ships. They appeared out of nowhere. Our orbital defense platforms, they're all destroyed." The laughter died in the Emperor's throat. He ran to the window and looked up at the sky. Dark shapes moved against the stars, ships larger than anything in the Imperial fleet. As he watched, one of them fired a single beam of blue light. A mountain 50 miles away simply vanished, turned to atoms in an instant. "Send the fleet," the Emperor screamed. "All of it. Destroy these humans." But the Imperial fleet was having problems of its own. Admiral Zexicon commanded the Empire's finest battle group from his flagship, the Iron Fang. When the emergency call came from the homeworld, he immediately ordered his ships to jump to hyperspace. They never made it. Human ships were waiting for them. Not in normal space, but actually inside hyperspace itself. Admiral Zexicon couldn't believe what his sensors were telling him. Humans had technology that let them fight in hyperspace. That was supposed to be impossible. "All ships battle formation," he ordered. "Show these mammals what Imperial steel can do." The Imperial fleet was massive. 200 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts that could destroy planets. They had won 1,000 battles across the galaxy. Their weapons could punch through any known armor. The human fleet was smaller, only 50 ships. But when they opened fire, Admiral Zexicon realized that numbers didn't matter anymore. Human weapons were unlike anything he had ever seen. They fired beams of contained antimatter that ate through Imperial armor like it was paper. They launched torpedoes that opened tiny black holes on impact. Some ships simply fired pure energy that turned matter into plasma. The Iron Fang's shields lasted exactly 37 seconds. The ship's armor lasted another 12. When the antimatter beam hit the reactor core, the massive dreadnought exploded like a dying star. Admiral Zexicon's last thought was a question. Where had the humans learned to build weapons like gods? The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the entire Imperial fleet was destroyed. Not one human ship had been seriously damaged. Similar battles happened across the galaxy, but they were so one-sided that battle wasn't really the right word. It was more like extermination. The Vorthak tried to use their crystal ship's ability to regenerate damage. Human weapons simply vaporized the crystals faster than they could regrow. The Nebulan consciousness tried to hide their gas-form fleets in nebulae. Human sensors could track individual molecules across star systems. Every advantage the major species had held for centuries was useless against human technology. But the real shock wasn't just the weapons, it was the tactics. The Council species had grown lazy over hundreds of years of easy victories. They fought the same way their ancestors had, using the same strategies and the same formations. They expected their enemies to do the same. Humans fought like no species the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They attacked from directions that should have been impossible. They used the enemy's own technology against them, turning communication networks into weapons and defensive systems into traps. Admiral Elena Vasquez commanded the human assault on the Vorthak core worlds. She was small and quiet. the kind of person most species would dismiss as harmless. She was also one of the most brilliant military minds in human history. The Vorthak had built their defense around massive crystal fortresses that floated in space around their homeworld. Each fortress was the size of a city and armed with weapons that could crack moons. For 1,000 years, no enemy had ever gotten past them. Admiral Vasquez studied the fortresses for exactly 17 minutes. Then she ordered her ships to retreat. The Vorthak defenders were confused but pleased. The humans were running away just like they should. But their celebration didn't last long. Admiral Vasquez hadn't retreated. She had positioned her ships near the system's star, using technology that the Vorthak couldn't understand. The human ships began to manipulate the star's magnetic field. Solar flares erupted from the star's surface, aimed like arrows at the crystal fortresses. The flares carried enough energy to power a planet for a year. When they hit the crystal structures, the fortresses didn't just break. They melted like ice cubes in a furnace. The Vorthak homeworld surrendered without firing a shot. The Nebulan consciousness tried a different approach. They were beings of living gas, able to think and act as one massive mind. They decided to abandon their physical forms and hide in space itself, planning to wait until the humans gave up and went home. They had forgotten that humans were very good at hunting. Captain Lisa Park commanded a small human science vessel called the Truth Seeker. Before the war, she had been studying stellar phenomena. Now she was tracking nebulans through interstellar space. The nebulans thought they were invisible, scattered across light years of empty space, but humans had learned to detect the quantum signatures of conscious thought. Captain Park's ship could follow the nebulan consciousness like a bloodhound following a scent. When she found them, she didn't attack with weapons. Instead, she used something much worse, a consciousness disruptor. The device broke the psychic bonds that held the nebulan consciousness together. For the first time in their species' history, every nebulan became an individual. They couldn't think as one anymore. The experience was so traumatic that most of them simply shut down, falling into a catatonic state. The few who remained conscious begged for mercy. The war's final battle took place at Harmony's Edge Station itself. The Galaxy Council had barricaded themselves in the Great Chamber, protected by the last of their loyal forces. Admiral Chen came for them personally. His ship, the Sarah's Light, docked at the station without resistance. The human soldiers who marched through the corridors weren't the primitive warriors the Council expected. They wore armor that made them nearly invulnerable and carried weapons that could level buildings, but they didn't come to slaughter. They came for justice. The Great Chamber where Sarah had been condemned was now a prison. The surviving council members huddled together, waiting for the human admiral they had wronged. Admiral Chen entered the chamber alone. He was an old man, gray-haired and tired, but his eyes burned with the fury of a father who had lost his child. "You killed my daughter," he said simply. Ambassador Kexathar tried to maintain his dignity. "She was a spy and a liar. She got what she deserved." Admiral Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Really? Let's find out." He activated a holographic display that filled the chamber. It showed the secret mines that Sarah had discovered. But now the display was live, showing human soldiers freeing the enslaved workers. "We found your mines," Admiral Chen said. "All of them. We found the mass graves. We found the children who had been worked to death. We found everything my daughter tried to tell you about." The council members watched in horror as the evidence of their crimes was displayed for all to see. Thousands of bodies, families torn apart, children who had died in darkness far from their homes. "She was telling the truth," Admiral Chen continued. "Every word. And you killed her for it." He turned to look at each council member in turn. "The question now is, what should we do with you?" The chamber was silent except for the quiet sobbing of some of the smaller species representatives. They had known about the mines, but they had been too afraid to speak up. "The same species that condemned my daughter now beg for mercy," Admiral Chen observed. "How convenient." Ambassador Kexthar found his voice. "What do you want? Tribute, territory? We can negotiate. Negotiate?" Admiral Chen's voice was ice cold. "You don't understand. This isn't a negotiation. This is a trial. And you've already been found guilty." He paused, letting fear fill the chamber. "The only question is the sentence." Outside the station, human ships waited. They could destroy Harmony's Edge with a single shot. They could glass entire worlds. They could wipe out whole species if they chose. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what justice looked like when humans dispensed it. Admiral Chen looked at the broken council members one last time. These beings had ruled the galaxy through fear and violence. They had crushed anyone who opposed them. They had murdered his daughter to protect their power. Now it was time to show them what real power looked like, and what mercy could accomplish that vengeance never could. Admiral Chen stood in the silent chamber, looking at the broken leaders who had once ruled the galaxy. They expected death. They expected their worlds to burn. They expected humans to be just as cruel as they had been. They were about to learn they were wrong. "You will all stand trial," Admiral Chen announced. "Not the kind of trial you gave my daughter, but a real one. With evidence. With witnesses. With justice." Ambassador Kexthar looked confused. "You're not going to execute us?" "Some of you probably deserve death," Admiral Chen replied. "But that's not my decision to make anymore. It will be decided by representatives from every species in the galaxy, including the ones you enslaved." He activated his communicator. "General Martinez, begin Phase 3. Across the galaxy, human ships began a very different kind of operation. Instead of destroying, they started building. Instead of conquering, they started liberating. On the mining worlds where slaves had died in darkness, human medical teams worked to save the survivors. Engineers built new facilities to replace the death camps. Teachers came to help the freed workers learn skills that would let them build new lives. The rescue operations were massive. Humans found slave camps on over 200 worlds. Some had been hidden for decades. Children had been born in the mines and had never seen sunlight. Families had been separated for generations. Dr. James Chen, Sarah's younger brother, led one of the medical teams. He was only 19, but he was already a brilliant doctor. He had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment, the uranium mines of Kexthor Prime. The mines were poisonous. Radiation had killed thousands of workers over the years. The survivors were sick and dying, their bodies destroyed by years of exposure. "How many?" James asked the human soldier who met him at the entrance. "Over 3,000 still alive." "Maybe. It's hard to tell. They're in bad shape." James walked into the mines and felt his heart break. The workers were from dozens of species. Most looked like skeletons. Their fur had fallen out. Their scales were gray and cracked. Some couldn't even stand up anymore, but they were alive, and James was going to make sure they stayed that way. "Set up the medical bay in the main chamber," he ordered his team. "Start with the children. Use the heavy radiation protocols. And someone get me a list of everyone we find. These people have families who think they're dead." The work was hard and heartbreaking. Many of the workers died despite James's best efforts. But many more lived. Children who had never played began to laugh. Adults who had forgotten their own names started to remember. One worker was an old grial named Quindar. He had been in the mines for 30 years. His silicon-based body was cracked and damaged, but his mind was still sharp. "Why do you help us?" Quindar asked James. "Your people owe us nothing." James thought about his sister Sarah, who had died trying to save people like Quindar. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said. "Because everyone deserves to be free." While the rescue operations continued, Admiral Chen began the work of building a new government for the galaxy. The old council was finished. Its leaders were in prison, waiting for trial. Its laws were being rewritten. Its corrupt system was being torn down piece by piece. But Chen didn't want humans to rule the galaxy alone. That would just create a different kind of tyranny. Instead, he did something unprecedented. He called for elections. Every species in the galaxy was invited to send representatives to a new assembly. Not just the big species or the rich ones, but everyone. Even species that had never been allowed to speak before would have a voice. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of species sent delegates to the new assembly. Many had to travel in human ships because they had never been allowed to leave their home systems before. The assembly met on a new station that humans built in neutral space. They called it Hope Station, in memory of Sarah Chen and all the others who had died fighting for justice. The first session was chaos. Hundreds of species trying to talk at once, different languages and different ways of thinking. Some delegates had never seen other species before. But slowly, with human help, they began to work together. The new government was based on principles that Sarah had believed in. Every species had equal representation, regardless of size or power. Decisions were made by evidence and debate, not by force. Laws applied equally to everyone. They called it the Galactic Democracy. The name was simple, but the idea was revolutionary. The trials of the old council leaders took place on Hope Station. They were broadcast across the galaxy so everyone could see that justice was being done properly this time. Ambassador Kexthar was the first to be tried. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Thousands of witnesses testified about the slave camps, the illegal mining, the murders of innocent people. But he was given a fair trial. He had lawyers to defend him. He was allowed to present evidence. All the procedures that had been denied to Sarah were given to him. The jury was made up of representatives from 12 different species, including some that had been enslaved by the Zephyrian Empire. They listened to weeks of testimony before making their decision. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was life in prison, working to help rebuild the worlds he had helped destroy. Not death, as he had expected, but something that might actually help his victims. Similar trials were held for the other council leaders. Some were found guilty and imprisoned. Others were given lesser sentences. A few who had tried to oppose the worst abuses were allowed to serve the new government. The old emperor of the Zephyrian Empire received the harshest sentence. He was personally responsible for millions of deaths. The jury sentenced him to life in the uranium mines he had created, experiencing the same conditions his slaves had endured. He died within a year. No one mourned him, but the trials were just the beginning. The real work was building something better. The new government faced enormous challenges. Billions of beings needed food and medical care. Entire worlds had to be rebuilt. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to learn to work together. It wasn't easy. There were fights and disagreements and moments when it seemed like the whole project might collapse. But something amazing happened. When species were treated equally, when their voices were heard, when their needs were considered, most of them chose cooperation over conflict. The Vorthak shared their crystal-growing technology to help build new cities. The Nebulans used their communication abilities to connect distant worlds. Even some Zephyrians, freed from their empire's brutal culture, contributed their military knowledge to protect trade routes from pirates. Admiral Chen stepped down as military commander once the new government was stable. He was offered the position of president of the Galactic Democracy, but he refused. "I'm a soldier," he said. "Politicians should be chosen by the people, not imposed by the military." Instead, he returned to Earth to spend time with his family and grieve for his daughter. But he kept one job. He remained commander of the human fleet that protected the new government. The galaxy was at peace, but Chen knew that peace had to be guarded. There were still pirates and warlords who preferred the old ways. There were species that might try to rebuild empires. There were always those who chose violence over justice. The human fleet made sure that such people understood the consequences of their choices. 5 years after Sarah's death, her brother James stood in the assembly hall of Hope Station. He was now Earth's chief representative to the Galactic Democracy. At 24, he was one of the youngest delegates, but his work in the rescue operations had earned him respect across the galaxy. Today was special. The assembly was voting on the Chen Accords, a new set of laws designed to prevent the abuses that had led to Sarah's death. The laws required transparency in all government operations. They protected the rights of accused persons. They created an independent justice system that no single species could control. The vote was overwhelming. 847 species in favor, 23 opposed, 12 abstaining. As the results were announced, James thought about his sister. Sarah had believed that different species could work together if they were just given the chance. She had died for that belief. Now, 5 years later, hundreds of species were proving her right. After the vote, James was approached by an old friend. Quindar, the Greel who had been rescued from the uranium mines, was now the representative for his people. His silicon body had healed, and his eyes were bright with hope. "Your sister would be proud," Quindar said. James nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Then he found his voice. She would be amazed. "All of this? It's so much more than she ever dreamed." "No," Quindar replied. "This is exactly what she dreamed. A galaxy where truth matters more than power, where justice is possible for everyone." That night, James sent a message to his father on Earth. Admiral Chen was now retired, spending his days tending a garden he had planted in Sarah's memory. "Dad," James wrote, "the Chen Accords passed today. Every species in the galaxy voted to protect the rights Sarah died defending. The slave camps are all closed. The children are free. The galaxy is learning to choose justice over stability, truth over convenience." He paused, thinking about how to end the message. Finally, he wrote, "Sarah would have been proud." On Earth, Admiral Chen read the message while sitting in his daughter's garden. The flowers were blooming, just like the hope Sarah had planted in the galaxy's heart.